My name is Hannah Burkowski, and I chose to do my visual riff essay over photographer Gordon Parks. In this picture here, I feel as if someone was paying homage to Parks' photographic style of black and white with intense contrasting. Throughout this presentation, I will display some of Parks' photos that I found most impressive and what I felt captured his overall technique in his collections. I will also include my critique on a few pieces of Parks' work and give my riff on one of those pictures. Moving on, you can see here a list of Parks' background information. He was born on November 30th, 1912 in Fort Scott, Kansas, where he was the youngest of 15 children. He later died at age 93 on March 7, 2006 in New York City, New York. Parks attended a segregated public school in his childhood where black students were encouraged not to further pursue their education. Parks noted in a documentary that one of his elementary school teachers told him his desire to go to college was a waste of time. By age 14, Parks found himself mourning the loss of his mother and attempting to fend for himself. He was forced to travel by train to live with family across the country and find whatever odd jobs he could get. This included busboy, waiting tables, and eventually working in brothels and gentlemen's club. While he was working, Parks noticed photographers' portfolios around him in magazines and newspapers. But it was not until Parks was 25 years old that he purchased his first camera, a Voigtlander Brilliant. He paid $7.50 at a pawn shop in Seattle, Washington for the camera. Parks found himself wanting to pursue photography as a career and eventually was accepted into a photography fellowship with the Farm Security Administration in Washington, D.C. This kind of achievement was so meaningful to him because it gave him the opportunity to use his camera as a weapon and fight segregation in America. You will notice later on that Parks' typical photography focuses primarily on race relations, poverty, and civil rights. While Gordon Parks earned a lot of awards in his lifetime, here are a few I found interesting and impressive. He was awarded the Magazine Photographer of the Year in 1960, just 23 years after he purchased his first camera. Parks was also awarded the Spingarn Award from the NAACP in 1972. This award is for outstanding achievement by an African American, a great honor for Parks. In 2000, Parks received the Congress of Racial Equality Achievement Award. Finally, in 2002, Parks was inducted into the International Photography Hall of Fame and Museum. Throughout his successful life, he earned over 20 honorary doctorates. Some of the techniques that Gordon Parks uses are listed here. I found that almost all of Parks' work are in black and white. He does a great job of using contrasting and shadowing, as well as a lot of depth to make his photographs seem so modern and timeless. I enjoy his black and white photos a lot because it makes you have to think more about the scene and what it might have looked like if you were there in real time. The time at which Parks was photographing was the social realism era. You will see many different collections in which Parks highlights the working class and really focuses on the segregated poverty throughout the nation. Another style Parks typically focus on in his photos are people instead of objects or sceneries. Rarely did I find a photo in his collection that did not have at least one person of them. Next, you will see a list of just some of Parks' photographic work in collections. These are collections I found most interesting, but if you have time, I encourage you to look at the remaining ones I didn't list. The collections I chose to include as an overview of Parks are his performers, segregation story, and civil rights. I think these particular collections really highlight his style and techniques and can be a broad example of what his other collections look like. In this slide, we see Parks' collection of performers. This is the first photos I saw that had color instead of black and white. All of these photos were taken in New York. From the left, titled Dancer Mary Ellen in a Telephone Booth, captured in 1952. Duke Ellington in Concert, 1960, and Untitled in 1958. But to me, it looks like a scene inside a gentleman's club or a burlesque show. I chose to include this collection because I really enjoy the light work that Parks did. With the Duke Ellington photo, you see a silhouette of a piano man and a singer, and the use of shadows is so captivating. One of the most interesting Parks collections, in my opinion, and one of the most saddening, is the Segregation Story collection, taken in Mobile, Alabama in 1956. These photos show what life was like for Black Americans in Alabama during segregation. The left photo, titled Mother and Children, show a woman with 3 children sitting on a porch step outside. The children are very young and the house is worn and appears to be small. The next photo is outside looking in. A group of black children are looking through a wire fence at a park instead of inside the fence. The title suggests that this park is for whites only and black aren't allowed, so the children just have to enjoy the entertainment from the outside. Last, we see a photo of a mother and a young daughter, dressed nicely in a fancy dress and jewelry, standing below a sign titled Colored Entrance. The women look upset and astounded at the sight, but this is how America was at the time. By including all these photos in color, I think Parks wanted people to see raw footage instead of using its traditional shadow and contrast work. The color allows us to see more detail about the photo and image of what it looks like in real time. The final collection I'm going to show is Park's civil rights photos. The left photo, titled Black Panther Headquarters, taken in San Francisco, California in 1970. A group of 5 black men showed gathering around the table posing for Parks. They are all glaring into the camera and shown in dark colors. The lit room around them makes their faces light up more, so we were able to see their stares. The next photo, titled Rallies In, taken in Washington, D.C. in 1963, showed people scattered through a park with debris of sign and paper around them. It appears that the black people are picking up the scraps left from the rally. I am not positive what rally this was, but by the looks of the scraps, it appears to be a segregation mark. You are able to see a sign sitting in the rubble on the left side of the page titled We Demand in all caps. Last, this photo is untitled, but taken in New York in 1963. I believe Parks wanted this photo to be untitled because of the text on the sign, "We are living in a police state." I find this photo to be very interesting because currently in America there's a great divide between the black community and the police force. The look on the man's face and the look on the man's face behind them shows defeat and sadness. Parks did a great job of capturing these people in such a raw state and publicizing them as fighters and people that strive for change. Transitioning into this slide, we reach my critique on a few of Parks' work. For these 2 photos, I will be using Lester's perspective of technical, personal, and expressional perspective. The first photo on the left, titled Fur Fashion, featured in Parks' fashion collection, taken in New York in 1949, shows a woman draped in fur with a smoldering glare into the camera. This photo was taken almost 70 years ago, but still looks very modern. My personal perspective of this image is at the amazement of how timeless it is. You are able to see how clear every detail and the depth of the blurred background allows it to be focused on the woman's face. I think Parks did a great job of framing her face and making that and the fur the focal point of the photograph. The technical perspective of this photo is featured in black and white and has a focus on the brightness behind the woman as well as the dark colors the woman is wearing. We see shadows from the trees in the background of the photo and the contrasting colors of light to dark shown in the fur as well as the woman's skin compared to her clothing. The expressional perspective of this image is interesting because Lester claims that black and white can have a documentary feel, and while I do not think it looks documentary, I think the photo should have been in color to really be able to capture the true colors of the fur as well as the colors in the rest of the photo. The photo seems very intimate as the woman is staring straight into the camera, and if color would have been used, we would have been able to see the color of the woman's lipstick and her eyes, making the photo even more playful. The next photo I'll be critiquing is said to be Parks' most famous piece, titled American Gothic from his government work collection. The photo was taken in Washington, D.C. in 1942. The woman in the photo holding the broom and the mop is Ella Watson, a charwoman in Washington, D.C. Parks met Watson while working for the FSA. He was instructed to get to know the charwoman by his mentor and boss, Roy Stryker. Parks captured this photo of Watson and presented it to Stryker for his opinion. He responded by saying the photo would be the indictment of America and that every photographer in the building would lose their job. The photo was controversial at the time because of the metaphors around it. The use of shadow and light on Watson's face allows us to only see part of her beaming glare. The blurred American flag was to blur all the false accusations thought about America, such as the land of the free, while these black people were living in such imprisonment. My personal perspective of this photo is that of empowerment. I think that Watson really put a face to the attitude of the black community was trying to have. The frail woman, while small, has the look of determination and will. You can see that she is not done fighting for what she believes is right and fair. I think that this photo was controversial because it made the white population uncomfortable. To have a black woman stand in front of the American flag and hold her weapons was powerful and motivational to the rest of the black Americans. The technical perspective of this photo carries a lot of contrast and dark elements. The use of intense shadow gives it a very serious tone. The glare from Watson shows that she is very serious and intense. Parks' use of black and white here was critical because color would have made the photo less powerful. The dark tones contrasting with the white of the flag really makes Watson stand out in the photo and makes her be the focal point. The expressional perspective of this photo is dramatic and serious. Parks really did a great job of making this feel weathered and hurt just as the black community was feeling at this time. Viewers can really feel the seriousness about the photograph, and it contains a lot of hard emotions, and I think that's what made this photo so iconic. The photo I chose to riff on is the fur fashion photo. I really enjoyed how Parks captured the woman and how the photo carried a lot of depth to it. My photo is from my senior picture album taken about 3 years ago. I think the two photo styles are similar as they both contain an emphasis for light and have the blurred background allowing the focus to be on the person. My image is different in that there are not as many dark elements. The contrasts in the photo are not as intense as they are in Parks. The use of shadow is very similar, only my photo has more shadows with lines and depths, while the shadows in Parks' photo looked like there was a light directly on the woman's face. I think if Parks had been the one to take my photo, it would not have changed much. It would have been very similar to the one here. Here are the two photos side by side. These are the sources I used for this assignment. Thank you for watching.